Hey, what's up? Meditate here, and in this video we're going to go through the anatomy of the gallbladder, bile pathway, and the pancreas, which are organs we call accessory organs. Accessory organs are not a part of the digestive tract, but they have an essential role in the actual digestion. That's why they're called accessory organs. So in this video, we're first going to go through the bile pathway, as you see here. We're going to go through the parts of the bile pathway, what the functions of bile is, and the layers of the bile ducts. After that, we're going to go through the anatomy of the gallbladder, this one. Basically talk about the different parts of it and the layers and the coverings. And then we're going to go through the anatomy of the pancreas. Basically talk about its function, its topography, and structures associated with it. Cool. So let's start with the bile pathway first. So let's now start by looking at the anterior view of the bile pathway and then tilt our model a little bit. We will see the entrance into the liver. So what we see now is the liver, the gallbladder, the pancreas, and then a perfectly drawn duodenum going around the pancreatic head, as you see here. So the bile pathway is shown here, and let's now follow the bile from beginning to end to really see what's going on. It all starts up here at the liver, because the liver produces the bile. Now, I'm not going to go into too much detail into the physiology of bile, since I want to focus on anatomy for now, but bile contains roughly around 97% water, and under 1% bile salts and some slight percent of bilirubin and fat. Bile salts are essential in digestion of fats or lipids because they help diluting the lipids in water through the process of emulsification. And I'll spend a quick minute explaining this mechanism to you before we continue because we need to understand what we're studying. So when you eat, your body separates the food into proteins, lipids, and carbs. And they're separated this way because the body handles them differently. Lipid metabolism is an extremely interesting pathway because when we talk about lipids, the big components that we are going to be, consuming in certain types of food is triglycerides. Other things that we're going to consume that is consistent with the lipid category are cholesterol and phospholipids. But the most significant here in caps are going to be the triglycerides. So we'll stick with this example. Triglycerides are categorized as what we call polymers, which takes a large amount of time for our cells to absorb. In our digestive tract, we got these monster enzymes called lipases, which eat its way through the polymers to break them down into their monomers. In this case, triglycerides will become free fatty acids and glycerol. And now these monomers are much easier to absorb through our intestines. So where do bile come in all this? Well, this process requires the environment to be watery in order for the lipases to work. So lipids has to be diluted in water. Fat likes to stay close to each other. They're hydrophobic. So what they're going to do is that they're going to clump to each other and form a lipid globule. And now the problem is that the lipids is not going to be diluted in water anymore. They're just going to float around in their own environment. And the poor little monster lipase doesn't have enough surface area on the lipid globule to chew on. So the process of breaking down lipids become very, very slow and inefficient. This is where bile comes in. Bile salts will form a layer around the lipid globule, diluting them into the water, where a lipases can snack its way through and separate all the lipids apart much more efficiently. This process is called emulsification, and that is the reason why bile is essential in digestion of fats. So that was a simplified quick scheme. Now let's continue with the anatomy. Bile will go down through the left hepatic duct and the right hepatic duct. The right and the left hepatic ducts will eventually unite in the middle and form a common hepatic duct. The common hepatic duct is about 5 centimeters long and it goes through the porta hepatis or the transverse groove protected by the hepatoduodenal ligament. Now the gallbladder is here and it contains a lot of bile. The gallbladder is a bladder that stores bile. So when you've eaten, bile will be squeezed out through the gallbladder and then down through the cystic duct. Now the cystic duct and the common bile duct will unite and they will form the bile ducts. And now I want to focus on the gallbladder a little bit before we continue because it has some important anatomical structures. The gallbladder is directed forward under the liver and it forms a fossa called the fossa for the gallbladder. Now let's go ahead and isolate the gallbladder with the bile pathway. Here again you see the left hepatic duct and the right hepatic duct. They come together and form the common hepatic duct. Then the gallbladder has the cystic duct, which unite with the common hepatic duct to form the bile duct. Now the gallbladder is divided into 3 distinct regions. We have the rounded anterior part called fundus, and then there's a body of the gallbladder, and then there's a neck of the gallbladder, which continues into the duct I mentioned earlier, the cystic duct, or the ductus cysticus. Let's now go ahead and open up the gallbladder to look at the layers of the gallbladder wall. So let's go ahead and take one small part of the gallbladder and look at it histologically. Now the walls of the bile duct and the gallbladder are formed by 3 layers. We have the inner one, the tunica mucosa, highlighted here in blue. It has a tunica muscularis. Then it has a tunica serosa, which is the one you see here, or a tunica adventitia. Notice though that usually there's always a tela submucosa underneath the tunica mucosa, but the gallbladder and the bile ducts doesn't have that. They don't have the tela submucosa. So the walls of the gallbladder and the bile ducts, they only have 3 layers, not 4. So keep that in mind. Now let's do the mucosa first. The tunica mucosa has these folds on it called the mucosal folds of the gallbladder. That is those folds you see here histologically, which you can also see on the gallbladder grossly. They are mostly present when the gallbladder is empty, and you will find them on all 3 parts of the gallbladder. Another structure you will find on the tunica mucosa, in the region of the neck of the gallbladder and the cystic ducts, as you see here, are these extra folds called the spiral folds. They kind of surrounds the neck of the gallbladder and the cystic duct. Beneath the epithelial layer, you will find numerous glands called mucosal glands that lubricates the lumen of the gallbladder and the bile duct. So that is the tunica mucosa. Next, we have the muscularis layer, the tunica muscularis. And what's interesting here is that usually tunica muscularis has 2 different muscle layers, but on the gallbladder and the bile pathway, there are only 1 layer of muscle. One layer called the circular muscle fibers, or striatum circulare. And keep in mind that this goes for the rest of the bile ducts as well, not just the gallbladder. Alright, and then the outer layer, we call this the tunica serosa or tunica adventitia. And so if you remember the differences between the tunica serosa and the tunica adventitia is only a connective tissue covering, while tunica serosa is going to be a slippery surface of serous membrane formed by the peritoneum. So if you look at the bile pathway anteriorly, this is how the coverings are distributed. The only part covered by the tunica adventitia is in orange here, which lies in the fossa for the gallbladder. The rest of the gallbladder is covered by the peritoneum and therefore has the name tunica serosa. And the same goes for the common hepatic duct and the cystic duct and the bile duct. They're all covered by the peritoneum, and that is through the hepatoduodenal ligament. They lie within the hepatoduodenal ligament, which is a part of the peritoneum, forming the slippery surface around the tunica mucosa. So that was the walls of the gallbladder and the bile ducts. So if you go back to this picture again, we know that the common hepatic duct and the cystic duct unites and form the bile duct, or the ductus choledoctus. So now I want to focus on this a little bit. So the bile duct is here. It goes behind the superior part of the duodenum and the pancreas. So let's remove a part of the pancreas so that we can see them better. So the bile duct is about 7 centimeters long, and if you look down here, we can see that the bile duct joins with the pancreatic duct to form the hepatopancreatic ampulla. Let's change the angle and do that again. Here we see the bile duct. It joins with the pancreatic duct, which secretes pancreatic enzymes with the bile, aiding in digestion. These two join and form the hepatopancreatic ampulla. They then open up into the descending part of the duodenum, forming the major duodenal papilla in the duodenum. And here, logically enough, you need something that makes sure that the food you eat doesn't go into the bile duct as it secretes the bile. And it does that through this sphincter here formed by the tunica muscularis. This sphincter it forms is called the Hepatopancreatic Sphincter, or also known as the Sphincter of Oddi. So now we've gone through the anatomy of the liver, the gallbladder, and the bile pathway. Now let's look at the anatomy of the pancreas a little bit. The pancreas looks like this, and it measures around 14 to 18 centimeters long, about 2 to 3 centimeters wide, and its weight's about 60 to 100 grams. So it's a tiny organ, but it's a very, very important organ in the body. And the reason why it's important is because the pancreas has an exocrine function, meaning it produces its pancreatic juice containing digestive enzymes which help you break down food, and bicarbonate, which neutralizes the hydrochloric acid coming from the stomach. But it also has an endocrine function, where it releases important hormones into the bloodstream from cells called cells of Langerhans. Insulin and glucagon are examples of important hormones released here, regulating the blood sugar. So the pancreas does have an essential function in the body. So the pancreas has three parts. It has a pancreatic head, it has a body, and it has a tail. The lowest point, which is the pancreatic head, lies in front of the second lumbar vertebrae, and the highest point is until the first lumbar vertebrae. And at the end, at the tail, you'll find the spleen resting next to it. Now topographically, here I've faded away all other structures so that we can see the pancreas. The pancreas lies in the epigastric region and the left hypochondriac region. So the head and the body lies in the epigastric region, and the tail lies in the left hypochondriac region. Alright, if we go back to this picture again, this is a posterior view of the pancreas after removing some parts of it. Remember, the bile duct will join with the pancreatic duct to form the hepatopancreatic ampulla. The pancreatic duct you see here is the main pancreatic duct, but if you look superior to it, you will see an accessory pancreatic duct, which secretes out the same juice as the pancreatic duct, containing digestive enzymes and bicarbonate for neutralizing the content that comes from the stomach. And if we flip this image, you will see that the pancreatic duct opens as the major duodenal papilla, while the accessory pancreatic duct opens as the minor duodenal papilla, located a little superiorly. So that was everything I had for the bile pathway, gallbladder, and the pancreas. If you found this video helpful, please put a like, share, comment, whatever you find convenient to you, and see you next time.